You're listening to That Music Podcast with Bryson Tarbett, the curriculum designer and educational consultant behind That Music Teacher and the Elementary Music Summit. Each week, Bryson and his guests will dive into the reality of being an elementary music teacher and how music can truly be transformative in the lives of the students you serve. Show notes and resources mentioned in this episode can be found at thatmusicteacher.com.
Welcome back to That Music Podcast. I'm Bryson Tarbett, and last week we talked about the fact that our teaching and our professional growth should always be growing. We should always be continuing to learn new things. Today, we are going to be talking about the difference between new knowledge and checking off boxes to renew our license, right? All professional development is not the same. And I think it's important that we understand that there's a time and place for both. For instance, when I was looking at, all right, I knew I wanted to start my master's, and I knew I wanted to get something that would really help me in the elementary level. Because as much as I loved my undergrad experience, I felt like I was, like a lot of you, I felt like I wasn't really prepared to teach at the elementary level, right? I was kind of making it up as I went. So after my first year of teaching, I decided to start my master's of music education with a Kodai emphasis, super fancy, right? From Capital University, because really I just wanted my Kodai levels. That's kind of the main thing. And while I was doing it, I was like, well, might as well get a master's degree. And kind of since then, I've realized how important it is for us to get content-specific professional development, right? New information that will directly help us in the elementary music classroom, right? There are Masters of Education programs out there that are online that I'm sure are wonderful and have great, things with psychology and just general teaching things. But the reality is, if we're struggling with certain concepts in the elementary music classroom, I highly encourage you to seek out solutions for that. I know that every state is different, that, I know in New York, you have to have a master's degree after so many years. Here in Ohio, it's not that, you could just get CEUs and keep on going with your bachelor's forever. But I think there's always going to be a drawback. And I think it's important for us to remember that there are going to be seasons in your life where you are going to have the opportunity, the time, and the financial freedom to seek new information. And there's going to be times where you just have to do the thing so you keep your license, right? I know that in my district, I would get CEUs for all of the professional development that my district offered. However, none of that professional development was elementary music. A lot of it was good context, right? Things about social emotional learning and trauma-informed teaching and de-escalation, things like that. That's important. But the reality is there was no new music information. So often as teachers, even if you're in a big school district, you're probably going to have to do a lot of this work yourself. You're going to have to seek out this information. You're going to have to request a release day and a PD so you can go observe someone, or start a master's program and things like that. My challenge for you is for you to, first of all, just notice what season of your life you're in. If you are not at the point where, if you just had, if you have 2 under 2 at home and you are just struggling to get by, just busyness wise, starting a master's degree is not going to be helpful. But so at that point, if your license is coming expired, you might need to be able, you just kind of do what's easy and do what's available. Now, with that being said, I also think that there's a time where we have to realize that we might have to go against the grain a little bit and push back and say, you know what, the PD that my district is offering me really isn't helping me grow completely as a music educator. I need something more. So that might mean, I've gone to my administrator before and said, hey, on this PD day, there's not really anything that's being offered that directly applies to me. Can I go observe someone teach in another district? And I've had really good success with that being approved. And I think that could be a good conversation to have, especially if you're in a small district where they're not offering anything for the arts teachers. But also just thinking about, if you want to start a master's degree, why do you want the master's degree? Are you getting a master's because you just want a pay bump? Is it because you have to, or you lose your teaching license? Well, both of those actually might be true as well. Or are you really looking for, really concentrated information on elementary music or whatever you're looking to do next, right? And I think that if your answer is you want to learn more about pedagogy and sequencing and things like that, that we should look more for a specialized master's program. Or even if you're, going to something like Vandercook College of Music, they have their MECA program, which is pretty cool, I have to say. Those are things where you can get graduate credit, but they're specifically for elementary music. Or they actually, with Vandercook, they're not just elementary music. There's all kinds of different music education things. So there are opportunities that are not a master's degree that are specific in music education. For instance, the Elementary Music Summit. Now, we are working on something new for July. I can't tell you anything about it yet, but we're working on something new to maybe make it a little bit more worth your time. But even if, right now, we can offer a certificate of attendance. So depending on your district in your school and your state, you might be able to use that for CEUs. So if that's the case, we'd love to have you. If it's not the case, we'd still love to have you. But I think it's important for us to realize and to just try new things sometimes, right? I'm fully aware of the fact that I'm the type of person that just wants to absorb as much information as I can. I started my master's degree right after my first year of teaching just because I wanted more. And at this point, I'm making myself not start another degree because I know who I am as a person, and I know that I will start another degree, and I need to not do that right now. But even if you're not that type of person, even if you're the person that you're like, you know what, I'm kind of where I want to be, even if it's just like a class or going to, your state MEA conference and going to a couple sessions that maybe are a little bit out of your comfort zone. Maybe if you're not really into movement, go to a Dalcro session or a folk dancing session and just learn something new. Even if you don't decide to use that in your classroom, you'll have that context, you'll have that understanding, that kind of in the background that you can use, and you might even learn something that's not directly related to the subject of the workshop that will be helpful in your classroom. So again, this is another short episode because we are right in the thick of the Elementary Music Summit, or actually, but at this point when it comes out, it might be over. I don't know. But as I'm recording, we are right in the thick of getting everything ready. And I just wanted to share some thoughts because professional development is not the same. There are some opportunities that are just going to be more impactful than others, and then there are some times where you're going to have to fight for that, right? And I think that's important for us to acknowledge. So with that being said, thank you so much for listening. We'd love for you to leave a review on iTunes or leave a comment on here if you're on YouTube watching us. And regardless, thank you so much for joining us. And in case nobody has told you lately, thank you so much for making a difference in the lives of the students that you teach.